Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Frenemies, the podcast where growth meets reality. Today, I'm joined by Roee Hartuv, the senior pricing advisor and go-to-market expert at Willingness to Pay. Hi, Roee.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on and to dive straight into it. If you look at SaaS today, what's actually broken in how companies are trying to grow?
So everybody, I'd like to differentiate between SaaS native companies, so companies that most of them grew up, 3 or 4 years ago, and AI native companies. These are all the AI companies that are now starting to pop up. And I think we've seen those traditional SaaS companies trying to implement AI technologies, obviously, into or bundle up or on top of their SaaS products. And I think the way these companies do that in a lot of cases just doesn't work. Just to give you an example. So if I had a SaaS product and subscription based, the monetization strategy was maybe the pricing metric was on seat based, the classical how many users, and let's build it on top of that. Create different packages, different features, different functionalities, but all of a sudden we want to create AI capability. It could be a bot in there, it could be an agent or whatever. How do we position that on top of the SaaS? Do we bundle it in there? Do we add it as an add-on? What is going to be our go-to-market strategy? Do all our customers want that? Probably yes, because it provides a lot of value. So this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges that classical SaaS companies are facing.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, seat-based pricing, what would other options look like than seat-based pricing? Value-based, outcome-based?
So yes, how to choose the right metric is value outcome based, but how you charge and the mechanism is usually, I would recommend usage or consumption based. And that solves a lot of the problem. Now, where the problem starts, it starts with the fact that in SaaS, this is a very big difference, maybe the biggest difference between SaaS and AI. SaaS companies, we all know that our margins are anywhere between 75 to 95. That means that to serve the next customer is practically zero. The cost to serve is practically zero. So it doesn't really matter how much I charge. I am, in principle, most likely profitable on every customer. So I look at the top line, I don't need to look at the bottom line. However, we know that with AI comes with a cost. And I've read certain papers on average, let's say an AI solution is 50% margins. Although I believe, I suspect that it's much worse than that. So having AI comes with a cost to it. And serving the next customer is not nearly zero, it comes with a cost. So back to your question, how do we charge based on what? If we do it on usage and we tie the amount of revenue that we charge our customers tied to a certain cost, so the more they use it, usage, the more we charge them for. And these two lines, revenue and costs, are pretty much parallel. They can go up, they can go down, but it's parallel. Compared to if we charge based on seats, the more users that used more, yeah, we might be losing. And I have a few customers right now that are losing money on very big chunks of segments of their user base because it comes with a lot of cost.
Yes, and based on your experience and what you're seeing in the market, do companies currently have the cost of AI mapped out? Do they have a clear overview of how much AI actually costs?
They have only the top line, what they're paying Google and OpenAI. They don't have that on an individual user or customer level. And that's a big gap. Now, again, this is where the differences between classical SaaS and AI companies are different. With AI, you probably know that. It's baked in. Like how you build your company, your product, it's baked in because you measure that. Classical SaaS companies, because of the fact that every customer was most likely profitable and came with a 90% margin, I never really needed to calculate how much cost each customer how much each customer cost me. So yeah, I don't see that in SaaS companies, and this is a very challenging thing for SaaS company all of a sudden to also look at the cost structure and not only the revenue and top line numbers.
So, how do you think how fast SaaS companies are catching up to that problem and mapping out the actual costs tied to customers?
Slow, too slow, and that's why AI companies are growing so fast. SaaS companies, traditional SaaS companies, are just not built to work at that pace. Now, I would say a caveat is PLG companies. That is one sort of go-to-market approach, usually associated to SaaS. These companies are better equipped to handle the amount of changes and implementation. But classical SaaS companies that up until 2 years ago sold only software, only seed-based, usually that change is very slow.
Yes. And so, how can companies or SaaS companies bridge that gap to speed up their execution and catch up with the rest of the market?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things is I'm currently working with a client, and they have the product team and they have the sales team. And I'm going to use a term or a role that comes from PLG, like the growth team. And the growth team, there are different definitions out there. What is exactly growth team? Like, what are they responsible? But I think the best description is a team that is a bit of product, a bit of marketing, and a bit of sales. And these teams, again, because it comes from the PLG discipline, are usually much faster to test, iterate, do A/B testing, roll out new features, etc. I think that's the best way to cope. So every company, I believe, that wants to move much faster needs to have this sort of hybrid kind of team that has all the different departments in one team, and they can work together and move much faster compared to the traditional way that our companies are structured, is that we have product, we have sales, and we have marketing, and these is basically what the topic of your podcast is, like, frenemies. Like, we meet time to time, but it's not one team. So it's the same thing, just extending it a bit to the product side as well.
Yes, and I think what I enjoy working in or working closer collaboration with product and also sales is that there's a lot of different methodologies that can be applied in that collaboration. So I have certainly taken some product methodologies in how product sprints are built up and project sprints and so on, the concept of minimum viable product into marketing work, and same with sales. So I think there is lots to gain from that collaboration. As I see it, though, play out in reality, lots of times, if there is not a specific business problem, it gets deprioritized in practice.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree, and I love this. In my world that I focus right now, pricing and packaging, this is my main focus today as a go-to-market advisor. Pricing and packaging is also kind of needs to adopt the agile kind of workflow. So again, back in the days, Pricing and packaging, same as go-to-market or sales processes, etc. You build it once and then don't revisit it for the next 3 years. We can no longer, again, because everything around AI, it requires us to be much more agile. Costs are now very high. They probably will go down. Some say it's just seasonality. So the next Nana Banana or the next image generation is just going to be as expensive as the last one. So all this requires us to be much more agile, as you say. So coming from the engineering and product perspective, agile programming, agile development, agile go-to-market, agile sales and marketing.
Yes. But how can, again, because we talked about the speed of execution. So what are other methods that companies and teams can apply to actually get up to speed and apply agile methods into their current ways of working?
Yes. And again, it's the same principles that are coming from product development.
Mm.
We cannot wait to have a perfect solution. Not in the sales process, not in marketing, not in pricing. We build hypotheses and assumptions, and we need to test them out. And testing out is the same thing as product. So currently, I am under a pricing and packaging project. We are building. We're trying to implement the freemium kind of offering, and it's as much as a go-to-market strategic decision and as a pricing and packaging decision. In that case, we decided, okay, like we can analyze this and it will take us 2 weeks to do all the different scenarios and then risk assessments, etc. Let's just launch it into, in their case, it's the US market, which is a relatively young market for them that they're trying to penetrate. Let's do A/B testing around that. Let's launch in it's North America. In the US, we'll do it with a freemium package. In Canada, without a freemium package, and let's see how the market reacts. And what we're testing, how many people that are currently paying will downgrade to the freemium version. How much pipeline will that generate? Because that's the purpose of freemium, to generate more pipeline and have enough users that will convert at some point to justify serving a freemium tier. So it's all about testing, iterating. We'll test it out in their case, funny enough, the US is not their biggest market. So we're testing it out. We want to see that. We gave it 90 days. We define how exactly, what are the metrics that we want to solve. And after 90 days, if it works, we're going to roll it out to the entire company's existing customer base and existing all the other regions. So that's how to do it.
Yes, you now added a second element, and that is the balance between speed and accuracy. So what is your general advice on that balance between speed and accuracy, specifically in relation to analyzing data?
Mm-hmm. Because in most cases, and I was like that when I was an operator, accuracy was the focus, not to F things up. I'm now leaning much more heavily on speed and execution and less on accuracy. As long as we do create like kill switch for every testing that I do, like I have a kill switch. What are the parameters that we're monitoring that after a certain threshold, hey, this is, how do we back it down? So yeah, the kill switch, backing it down. How do we test it first? So there's a process here, but speed of execution is much more important from my perspective right now.
And I think the buy-in for prioritizing speed over accuracy comes due to the market pressure and the big changes that are happening in the market right now,
Mhm,
also due
mhm.
to AI and so on. So the buy-in from leadership for that is probably easier these days.
Exactly. And I think, yeah, OpenAI changed their pricing 12 times in the last 10 months. Or sorry, it was 10 times in the last 12 months. Anthropic, I'm assuming that most of us or most of the listeners are Claude users. They have changed their pricing and packaging and limits and fair usage policies. Every week they're changing something new. And we're trying to keep up. So these companies admittingly saying that, hey, we're losing money on our highest users. Again, the reason it's no longer 95 margins, etc. So, and they're testing out and they're constantly changing things. And I'm not sure, but they're testing out different options, different user types or segments, different regions. So they're constantly iterating and improving that. And I think, yeah, if they are doing this, and these are the most successful companies in the world, and they are still losing money and testing out, of course, that gives all of the rest of us the uh, the opportunity to test it out ourselves.
Yes, I think that is very well put. You just mentioned something that actually came up in a conversation I had with B2B marketers yesterday, and that is with the appearance of AI. It feels like even though you can have your proven ways of working with your like in your job with one piece of AI or a specific software, and the next day a new one comes up, and 2 weeks go, and all of a sudden you're already behind, while
Mm-hmm.
everybody else has caught up. Is that something that you see in leadership as well, and in companies overall, or is that something that is more role based?
I do see it in leadership, but I think it's crazy what's happening there. I am working now with one of around image processing, one of the top 3 companies in the world, and yeah, they're very cautious of, okay, they introduced that, they launched that, and keep on, like, they need to stay ahead of the game, and by looking at the different competitors. I would say that's something very unique to those very top high end type of industry markets, like, like horizontal AI, open AI, and Anthropic, and these groups. There's some of around image processing. I think the rest of us, yeah, we it's calmed down. It's not as fast. It's not as competitive as they're experiencing it.
Yeah.
But we all observe and learn, and it's like it's amazing.
It is. It's a very exciting time of change. At the same time, and it creates a lot of pressure on the core go-to-market functions.
Mm-hmm.
Also, yeah, keeping up with the current targets,
Mm-hmm.
keeping up with market trends,
Yeah,
and then of course also adjusting as quickly and as well as possible.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Adjusting is this ever constant adjusting of the approaches.
Um, at what point does growth stop being a tactics problem and becomes a company setup problem?
I think I think there's no real. It's always a problem. Like, it starts from day one, because I'm a true believer that the foundation of what you're building today will be the foundations of your next stages of growth. So if you're building, and if you're not building things right between, I don't know, that 1 to 5 million ARR, that will slow you down once you reach that next growth stage. So it's always both the tactical and the strategic kind of problem. And maybe the point I'm trying to make here is you shouldn't expect to, okay, that's a growth problem. We're not going to tackle it right now. We'll tackle it when we hit 10 million or the next funding round, because you need to also take into consideration what you're doing today that will serve the foundation of what you're doing tomorrow.
And how do you ensure that? Not knowing fully what happens tomorrow, right?
That's a good comment there. One of the things that I like to say, let's take data structure. So I'm an winning by design, revenue architecture. I did a lot of implementation of the bow tie. The bow tie is probably the most common data structure, and it's basically a numeric representation of the customer journey. And the question that I always got is when is the right moment to implement the bow tie? And when you're young, you don't have resources, you don't have money to buy those Power BIs and more expensive kind of data lakes and data analytics platforms. So that's when you're young. But when you're mature, if you haven't built the right foundation from the beginning, implementing a new data structure, new tools, we're talking about 6 to 12 month project. So what I always say is that, okay, so when you're just starting off, you probably don't need the tools. You can do it in Excel. You probably won't have the entire bow tie, the entire customer journey. You might just focus on the sales process, which what usually people do. And as you grow, you start to add different structure to different areas of the customer journey. So most likely the next step after you do the sales process is marketing. Let's see the leads and how they mature from website visitors to MQL to SQL, etc. So building that part off. And at some point when you have enough customers, you need to look at what we call the right side of the bow tie, which is post-sale. Let's look at the onboarding process and customer success. So this is just one approach, and there could be many other departments and areas that we are building the infrastructure to serve us well when we actually, as we go and build bigger and stronger organizations.
So what are the first signs or signals at a company that they should move to looking at the full customer journey or moving towards the bow tie?
Well, let's look at how companies usually grow. So in the beginning, we're a tight group, and marketing and sales work together because it's just like 4 people in the room, and that's where they work. We're really tight. And then at some point, we get a funding round, and we get a bigger office, and all of a sudden, we're not in the same room, 2 rooms next to each other. So this is where the physical silos starts to happen, and then we add customer success, and they're in another room, and then we start working remotely because we're hiring people from different cities and different countries. And this is where we start to get disconnected, working in siloed these areas. And at some point, you need to make sure that you plug everything back together. It's very hard. So if you don't do it from the beginning, it will be very hard for you to do that. So again, you ask me when or what triggers that, looking at from a strategic point of view, I would say it's from day one. You just need to focus, make sure that you still have that connection.
That absolutely makes sense. Just in reality, from the conversations I'm having, but also what I've been part of, saw, and so on. It's often, again, this part that doesn't get prioritized, because especially when you are smaller teams and early stage, your focus isn't on setting standardizations and rolling out playbooks. The focus is often, and has to be, on speed over standardization. So I think that a lot of times there is a tilting point when the disconnect gap has already been big enough, and then it needs to needs to close, and that takes time as well again.
Yeah, obviously. And I think, and I'm sure you've talked about it many times in your podcast, having joint KPIs and targets is one thing to solve that enforces the different departments, the different team members to actually sit down and see how they achieve the results together. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And talking about data, how much can SaaS companies actually trust their data today?
Yeah, I think not so much. Yeah, let's divide the two. Yeah, SaaS companies, the traditional companies, they've been around for more than 3 years, so they're not AI native companies. These companies are used to track only top line revenue. So how much revenue we're charging. Costs is just mostly cost of acquisition. So how much is the sales and marketing spend, less on how much it actually costs to serve. Some companies, the more advanced ones, do capture that cost to serve, but we don't really know how much it costs us to serve an individual customer. There are hardly no companies that I've met that have a decent unit economics calculator. Unit economics meaning like when I bring the next customer at this level, how much revenue am I going to get? How much it will cost me to serve, and what's going to be the margins for that individual customer. Even if it's not accurate on number of tickets they open, but yeah, on average, that's a usage pattern or that size. So if you don't have that, and let's say you now want to incorporate AI functionalities and start paying tokens to OpenAI, then you're basically flying blind. The classical, we didn't have that information. So I think in a certain sense, we're back to where we were like 10, 15 years ago when the term flying blind was used and thrown around because we did have data. We made a lot of progress. So we started to collect data, a lot about usage, a lot about top line revenue. But now we're back to the where we were because we don't have that cost element, which is very important for AI. Now, that's for the SaaS companies. AI companies, because they have been measuring tokens and usage from day zero, they usually have the right data in place.
Yeah. So I guess for that part, it is back to the advice you already gave earlier: make assumptions and run with them, make experiments, and iterate fast.
Yes, and start collecting usage and cost data.
Yeah. You earlier brought up, the US in comparison to Europe. Where do you see the biggest differences in how SaaS companies grow in Europe versus the US?
Yeah, I think that's not a secret. We are less risk averse in Europe. That means that we grow faster. The investors, it's harder to raise capital, although some indications say that now it's relatively easier to raise capital in Europe. However, generally speaking, it is harder, and the ticket amounts are smaller. All in all, this brings us to the fact that we're growing faster. We're growing slower than in the US.
Are there also positive parts in that difference, and also in being more risk averse?
There is. I'm not sure that this is an advantage for us in the industries that we're playing. So if speed is important, the ability to take risks, to test things out, to improve over time, to raise more capital, I think all these gives the US higher advantage over what we experience here.
Yeah. On top of that, of course, lots of innovation is made in the US and then
Hmm.
eventually brought over to Europe.
That's right.
So generally, I guess there is lots to learn for Europe from the US.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most important parts or ways for European SaaS companies to catch up and to take learnings from the US?
Hmm. I think we're getting better, but the when I first moved, so I moved from Israel to Berlin, Germany, 10 years ago, and I would say that Israel, in terms of how they operate, are much closer to Silicon Valley than in to Berlin or London. And I always say that the difference and having a good understanding about the Israeli high tech industry compared to the European one is the product people or the product is more advanced. So here in Europe, we're fantastic as operators, but compared to the US and Israel, what sets these companies apart is that their products are innovative and they're absolutely fantastic. One of the uh, criticism that we hear here, specifically in Berlin or Germany, is that a lot of the big companies are basically copycatting the U.S. And successful business model and successful operations, and just taking advantage that our local markets are just um, big enough for a company to succeed here. So
Mm,
I think that's the biggest difference that I see.
mm. But in a market like the SaaS market, it's overcrowded. There's lots of noise, and in a lot of ways, the old rule of the best product wins doesn't really count anymore. So
Mhm.
can that dynamic really play out? Copycatting known ways, known products.
I think so, because 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 we are fragmented. Like the how much Europeans? What's the population of Europe? 280 million compared to 260 in the US.
Mm.
There they have just one market. Here we're, I don't know, 20 something different markets. What works in the Netherlands does not necessarily work in Germany. So I think, and same goes to any other, like France and UK. That is an advantage for companies that want to dominate local markets, and it has been for a long time,
Mm,
and it will be moving forward.
mm,
Um, I'm now working with a Dutch company. It's the same problems that they have in the Netherlands and elsewhere. It's just that from a go to market and language barrier and all of that, they're limited to the Netherlands right now, and they want to maybe conquer or win the market in Benelux before they could go elsewhere, which DACH is the next logical step. So yeah, we have those boundaries, and it is works as an advantage to win certain market, but also a disadvantage when you think of, hey, I need to target 28 countries instead of just one big US market.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, talking about or getting to the point of pricing model and staying customer centric or centric. What actually moves the needle for customers right now?
The biggest impact is how we bundle the feature and functionalities into different packages. When you think of it, the old way of doing packaging is how you bundle. So the tier,
Yeah.
right? I have tier one, tier two, tier three. The classical way to do, and the reason you want to do that because you want to address or you want to um, reach certain market segments and price them differently and offer them different solution. The classical way to do that is just let's look at our feature list. Let's say 60% of the features that are mostly used by most of our clients, let's put them under the good. Let's add 30% of the next features. Let's put them under better. And under best, we'll take only the top features that are used by the 10% of our customers, and we could charge, and that are our most advanced, and we can charge a lot of money for them and put them under the best package. This is the classic way of doing this. Is very seller or product centric. However, being customer centric is bundling based on different jobs to be done. The client's job to be done. And jobs to be done is what they're trying to achieve. So it's another way to say, let's package around the value and what they could potentially, what is the potential outcome that they could get using our platform. So let's say, for example, I have a software for, I don't know, let's say restaurants. So in like the cashier, I have I could have one tier that solves just, hey, I just want to have a payment solution. So that could be just one simple solution that serves a specific job to be done. The next job to be done is I want to have that payment and collect money, but I also want to be able, not to put in numbers, but to be able to pick the items from the menu. And that serves another jobs to be done. That's a bigger, I don't know what, a different type of restaurant. And the next part is, let's say I have a chain of restaurants, or I want to manage also inventory. And the jobs to be done is to manage a complete restaurant, maybe staff management, all those capabilities. So that serves another type of customer segment and jobs to be done. So when we package the features and pricing according to that, that allows the entire sales conversation to be around what the client wants to get, what is the outcome that they're trying to achieve, what is the outcome that they're looking to solve. And that is a more centric approach. For years, by the way, so I created a lot of sales processes, and as a go-to-market expert, to train a lot of executives and sellers. And for you, and also as an operator managing my team, I always went and, hey, we need to do value selling, right? Because that's the best type of sales that we could have. Let's do value selling. However, in a lot of cases, I came to realize that if you don't have packages around the value, the outcome, the jobs to be done, it might be impossible to do value selling, because every discussion around scoping requires us to go into the features. Oh, you want this feature? Okay, so I'll give you that. And maybe you want that oh, you want staff management? Because, okay, I'll give you that feature and the ability to do payments, and I'll bundle it up for you as the buyer. But once you bundle according to jobs to be done, their entire sales conversation is around, what are you trying to achieve? Tell me about how you operate the restaurant. Oh, so you just want this? This is the package that will solve and address, and this is the outcome that you're getting. But no, you have staff management, you have inventory, you have maybe chains or multiple, so you need this tier for you. And you don't need to talk about features if you have that type of setup ready.
Is there anything in that companies overestimate?
In terms of?
In terms of being customer-centric and becoming more customer-centric in their pricing, but also across the go-to-market.
Yeah. The go-to-market, yeah, maybe I'll move it to the go-to-market, less around pricing, because that's something that I see left and right. Companies get confused easily between customer centricity and why we exist as a company, which is to make a profit. And the best example that I see time and time again is that we have customer success teams that they will do everything in order to make sure that the customers are happy. What exactly is happy? I don't know. Because the worst things that could happen is churn. Not all churn is bad. Not all customers need to be happy on our expense as a business. And I had a conversation a few weeks ago, coached a head of CS in a company that were making 10 million ARR. And I was like, what is your responsibility as customer success? And she said, well, it is to make the customers happy. And I said, yeah, that's right, but that's not your main goal. Your main goal is to make sure that the company is profitable. So when you put too many heads to serve or to serve your customers, or to fix problems that that your product currently has a limit, and you put heads on it, you're basically spending too much time to serve your customers. So that is the mistake, the most common mistake I see around customer centricity and how companies operate.
So how can teams, especially customer success teams, but that is also part of an overall structure, change that?
So first of all, understanding that not everything should be solved by customer success. There's a lot of solutions that could be solved with the product. Either the product is not good enough, and the classical example is onboarding. I see that time and time again, because we don't have the onboarding process creates a lot of friction. It's very hard. So let's put a customer success manager or an onboarding manager to make sure that the onboarding is successful. That is okay, but that's not the real solution. The real solution is we need to solve the onboarding process and make it as easier and smooth as possible from a product perspective. Yeah, and there's a lot of things that needs we need to think around that. If we want to put heads and managers on to solve a different product, we need to make sure that the cost and the ROI is worth it.
So where do you know if something is a go-to-market problem and when it's a product problem?
It's a good question. It's always the product problem, isn't it?
I mean, I guess everything ties down back to, comes back to product, right? Because it's the core. It's the core of the business, and how it evolves, develops, but also gets priced and promoted and sold is it's always at the core of it.
Yeah, I had a heated conversation. I think it was 2 months ago on LinkedIn, out of all, and I wrote what I believed was a very not naive, but very simple post that a go-to-market team with a bad product cannot achieve a lot, whereas a very good product, a company with a very good product and not so functioning or not so good of a go-to-market team, could do just fine. And I share the same thoughts, that it all comes down to the product. However, on LinkedIn, I got a lot of pushbacks from commercial and sales leader that showed me good examples of companies that their product was not ready, was not mature enough, was not good enough, but they were able to secure growth through good selling practices, processes, etc. Yeah.
I mean, then it comes back to like the conversation on what is a good product, right? And I think essentially staying with like the known frameworks or concepts, if there is a product market fit, I mean, then certainly a product can be like not fully matured enough, not have all of the features required to serve and so on. But then it has established the fit, and the sales methods and so on can be applied.
That's right.
Yeah.
But if I was to build a company, and again, I think it's a no-brainer. All the good companies out there are first of all fantastic product companies, and then In some cases, they have a sales team. In some cases, they don't have a sales team. Right? Anthropic, they're just now building their go-to-market team. I don't know. Check their job listings on LinkedIn. It's all around go-to-market. So just right now, they're focusing on building, in this case, enterprise selling motions, because all the rest are done PLG kind of. Yeah, sign up and just start using it.
Huh. So with AI coming in, are there any go-to-market motions that are becoming less relevant, or less relevant?
I don't think so. You and I had an exchange around this. I still believe that all the sales motion are still relevant. I just believe that PLG and self-serve motions are going to become more and more predominant in the market. And it will allow us to sell more and higher ACVs with no human involved. I'm not saying that AI bots will, that's not what I'm saying, but I think customers are much more educated. They do a lot of research. It requires less of hand holding throughout the sales process, if at all.
Yeah. So is there like, also because we talked about customer success with customers getting smarter, doing their research, and becoming more equipped buyers, is there something that SaaS companies need to change in their go-to-market to adjust to that?
Yeah, no longer focusing on just one sales process when we have a discovery and a demo and a trial and a scoping and negotiation, etc. I think that we need to be much more dynamic in that sense. We need to understand where we're capturing the customer, how much educated they are, and thereby applying the right process in there. Now, experienced sellers naturally do that. They know when to skip stages and they know how to guide the buyers throughout a right buying process. But that's the experienced sellers.
Yeah. If software ate the world was true a few years ago, what's the most accurate version for 2026?
Yeah, so I think based on everything that we said, I think it's clear, right? So AI is going to eat software.
AI is eating software.
Yeah, and
But
you hear those apocalyptic views on LinkedIn. I'm one of those people that believes that. Well, I don't want to say that SaaS is dead, but SaaS is definitely under threat. And even I read this morning that OpenAI are working on launching a mobile phone that is just going to be some sort of AI device. Doesn't need any apps, and you can just talk to it, and it gives you everything that you want. I don't know how it's going to be designed, but yeah, think about this. Like in the last 20 years, it was all about apps, apps, apps. Can at some point an AI agent replace the apps? And we're doing it like in small scale right now. For example, I use Revolut expense management system, or I used it. So I have a Revolut account, and I took pictures of every expense, and then it automatically uploaded. I created something with Anthropic with Claude. It works great. I just send an email to the bot and just capture that, extracts the information, put it in the Google Sheet document that I have. Yeah, this is my personal experience, and I'm sure that our listeners have found other ways to replace the software that they're playing. It's starting off today, and I think, yeah, it's just the beginning.
very true. It's just a beginning, as exciting and scary at the same time as it may be.
Yeah.
but there's no running away. Lots of adjusting and learning, I guess.
Yes. That's what I think that's the main message. There's something that um, I would end up with is that go to market, pricing and packaging, sales process. We need to be much more agile in testing it out. Um, yeah, understanding that we need to constantly evaluate change because the market are changing so fast. We need to adapt as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining. Lots of great thoughts and advice. Yeah, fantastic to listen to your experiences and perspective on the market.
Fantastic. I enjoyed that conversation and thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure.